Yes, I did it. Sorry for this moment. And our today's guest is Vsevolod. He will briefly introduce us to such a huge term like regulation of protection in clouds. And you know that it's a huge topic, but anyway, we want to share some experience in this way. So what can I say about Vsevolod? He's holding certifications. It's a CISSP certification and also the cloud security certification. Now he's working as a virtual CISO and also as a GRC expert. And of course, he has a huge experience in IT, cybersecurity, and related areas. It's about more than 40 years, yeah, like that. So
a bit less. I'm a younger man.
Okay, maybe 30 years of experience, and in different jurisdictions. It's Kazakhstan, it's Europe, and Russia also. So currently he is focused on maturing customer processes in IT and cybersecurity areas. So Vsevolod, floor is yours. I just need to stop my demonstration.
Thanks a lot.
I did it.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, colleagues. It's my first experience publicly presenting in English, and I will do my best to not give you a chance to boring. But may I ask you to turn on your cameras? It's really challenging to tell something to the screen. Not to live persons. And I will kindly ask Evgeny, Andrew, and Mirzaev to turn on, if possible. Nice to see you again. Okay, thank you. And I will love the ability to see your reactions on my words, on my ideas, on my suggestions. And first of all, I greatly appreciate the willingness of ISAC Astana chapter to invite me for this presentation, to share some of my ideas, some of my thoughts, some of my reflections on this matter. And I hope it's not our last meeting. I hope we will prolong this series of webinars. Thanks again to Anatoly for introduction. Yes, I hold some cybersecurity certifications. I hold some cloud certifications. I'm working on acquiring new knowledge, new skills, new experience around the clock. And your eyes lies to you. I am not actually human. I am some kind of octopus, and I have more tentacles than only IT and cybersecurity. It also clouds. Currently, we're talking about clouds risks. We're talking about clouds from the risk perspective, compliance, data science, project management, a lot of things. And totally was wrong about countries I worked before. I worked in 6 countries, some of them in the European part of world, some of them in Asian part of world. And I feel myself young enough to plan to work and live and work in new countries. And I plan to do it for decades. Okay. Being serious, this international experience gives me a unique opportunity to see on the problem of cloud regulations from the different point of views, not only from Russian or Kazakhstani point of view, but I currently understand what UK regulators think about it, what Singaporean regulators think about it, some European regulators, and I will try to share some of my ideas with you. At this moment, I know a bit about Tolly. We worked together some years ago. I know a bit about Andrei Morozov, but I don't know anything about Andrei Kudryashov, Evgeny Dobrovolsky, and Mirzarif Mirkarilov. And guys, may I ask you to write in the chat something about you, about your expectations, why you decide to spend half of your life on this event. I guess you trying to get some answers to some questions. Please write these questions. I will do my best to answer your questions during my presentation and after it. And again, I will do my best to not give you a chance of boring. Okay, so the key idea to start is the idea of decare. This is a key pillar of Anglo-Saxon culture. And as I know, in Russia, Kazakhstani, and some CIS countries, it's not widely knowledgeable. But really, it's really important. As Winnie Pooh said some centuries ago, we should do the right things and not do the wrong things. Actually, Duke is this way. You know, some people go to the information security industry from the technical side. For instance, from the positions of cyberops associates in some SOCs, from the ethical and non-ethical hackers positions, from some IT positions, IT technicians, system administrators, and a lot of these people think that all papers, all policies, all standards, all guidelines are really shit, and only the technical issues are matter. And they're right, trust me. But let's flip this coin. Some people go to the cybersecurity from audit firms, from internal audit teams, from risk management, and these people doesn't call the paper shit. Really, they think that paper is king, but technical controls good, but not so important. And they are right too. So we see two shores and no bridge between them. But really, Ducare is this bridge. This is a bridge between paper and real cybersecurity shore. In case when we look at security enforcement officer, knocking in our door, we see the customer who asks, where are my personal data? When we see police officer, or maybe we see auditor, they ask us why we do things that we doing, and why we not do things that we should do from their standpoint. And we need to explain the reasons why we do one kind of things and decide to not do another things. Let's talk about the incident. True incident or fiction incident, it's not matter. But when someone asks us how we detect, how we respond, how we mitigate, how we report, we need to show the real actions and the justification for them, why we do these actions. And UCARE is this thing. We need to explain it. One another important point. We are guilty by default. We are guilty by default unless we show the documents and real security measures. And due to this, we need to talk on both sides, on both shores, on documents and real measures. One important thing is that we need to balance three sorts of regulations. The most important from my standpoint, regulations in the personal data area, regulation in the critical infrastructure area, and some specific industry regulations for banks, for pharma, for astronautic, something like this. And of course, all regulations have three sides, have three participants: the company, the government, it may be some supervision agencies, it may be some regulation agencies, it's not matter here. Company, government, and customers. And we need to speak both on the formal compliance with some legislations, not only law, but some specific industry regulations like the rules number 48 in Kazakhstan for banking, and the real concerns of regulations. In case when we not comply with law, we are guilty and might be jailed. In case when we only formal compliant with law, we are guilty. And we need to understand the real concerns of regulators. And we need to discuss these concerns on very respective matter. So why we talking about the personal data protection on the first and foremost? First of all, privacy is one of the fundamental human rights. This is Article 8 of the European Convention of Human Rights, signed by 47 countries, including Russia, but surprisingly, not including Kazakhstan. It's noted in the Constitution of the Republic of Kazakhstan. And the fines for personal data protection rules violations are very, very severe. I will explain it later. And it's relatively easy to prove this kind of violations. If you will ask Google for the fines on data protection violations, the majority of answers will be about personal data protection rules violations. And talking about clouds, if cloud provider guilty for violations, really your company will still have primary responsibility for these violations. To explain why, we need to take in mind two key terms of GDPR. First, the term of controller as a person, authority, agency, other body who determines the purpose and means of the processing of personal data. And processor, like a robot, is someone who makes these actions on behalf of the controller. So in vast majority of cases, your company work in a data controller role. So you company, you are accountable for the personal data protection violations. Unless it proves that cloud provider committed violations, but going beyond the company instructions. It's mostly it mostly happens in SaaS and PaaS types of clouds, where the cloud provider have its own interest to the your customers' personal data. So why we're talking about critical infrastructure? Sometimes the national laws on the protection of critical infrastructure may apply to web applications. For instance, most well-known European directive in this area, it's NIS2. Its scope include the providers of online marketplaces, providers of online search engines, providers of social networking. But imagine that you have an online apotheke, and in this situation, you are provider of online marketplace. Imagine that you provide your customer the opportunity to search the specific kind of drugs in this apotheke. It's online search engine. Imagine that you provide your customers ability to share reviews on this online apotheke site. Let me congratulate you. You are provider of social networking services platform. So from the NIS2 standpoint, you are provider of critical infrastructure, and this law applies to you. I need to note that in Kazakhstan, in Russia, the government defined a specific list of critical entities, KVAIKI in Kazakhstan terms. But in Europe, only the sectors, specific sectors of economy, for instance, the online marketplaces. But as I explain later, the Kazakhstani companies should comply to European directive as well. So what the regulators worried about? First of all, they think that citizens are a weak side in relation to companies, service providers with a lot of expensive lawyers and stuff. So regulators should protect the rights and freedoms of citizens. It's first. Second, regulators worried about the large-scale threats to the life and health of citizens. For instance, if adversary successfully attacks the city water purification system, or maybe air regulation service. And last but not least, some kind of threats to entire industry. For instance, general banking panic in case of large-scale cyber incident in a leading bank. I can give you another example. Imagine one adjacent country in Central Asia too, that have only one tier-3 data center, tier-3 certified data center, and a majority of banks hold the IT systems and the data in this data center. So in case of disaster in this data center, the whole banking industry of this country will be damaged. And regulators are concerned about it. And they are right. Let me give you some examples of situations when a regulator should intervene. Unlawful disclosure of personal data, inaccessibility of critical information infrastructure, as I explained it on previous slide, unlawful disclosure of banking secrecy. But it need to note that regulator intervened not only when incident actually occurs or complaint received. A regulator should and actually do closely monitor and may initiate an investigation by its own initiative if the company is a dominant market participant like Kaspi or Halyk in Kazakhstan, or if regulator considers its activity excessively risky, like in my example with only one top-notch data center in country. Let me give you some example of large personal data violations. It's public cases. First and foremost is the Amazon fine that awarded by the Luxembourg State Agency on the violation of GDPR at it's about 746 million euros. And it's middle between 2% and 4% of worldwide annual turnover. But let me note that GDPR applied to anyone who monitor the subject behavior within the European Union. And imagine that your apotheke have an anti-DDoS solution in place. It's a good approach, but anti-DDoS monitor the behavior of a person on the far end, right? In this situation, you monitor the subject's behavior, you are under the GDPR, you are in the scope of GDPR. Same way, you process cookies for the clients came from European Union territory. It's the monitoring of subject behavior, you are in the scope of GDPR. Let me give you some example from the British territory. American lead credit bureau Equifax guilted to leak for 146 million personal data subjects data. But unfortunately, these damaged subjects include some millions of Britons. Due to this, the United Kingdom state regulator awarded a fine of 500,000 funds in addition to the United States fine. It's not so small. And as a result, the chief executive officer of Equifax was resigned. So it's example of the long arm of GDPR. And let me share one curious example of Singapore life. In Singapore, legal fines can reach the 10% of Singapore annual turnover, but the individuals who are guilty in the personal data Protection Act violations could be imprisoned up to 3 years. And the maximum actual fine was awarded to a quasi-state owned entity, Think Health. It's a holding that manages major public hospitals in Singapore, and IHIS. This is a state agency that accountable for the national information information system for health data. It's unbelievable in Kazakhstan that the major fine is awarded to a state-owned entity, but it's reality of Singapore. So what's about the Kazakhstan? Of course, we have national legislation. Of course, it applied for the whole territory of Kazakhstan, but legal fines are actually extremely low. In fact, these fines effective. I know informally in the heart and mind of the Kazakhstan National Information Security Committee that these small fines caused large waves of administrative penalties inside the companies that violate this personal data and protection law. And as a result, these violations doesn't recurrent in most. Let me say some words about the critical infrastructure and industry regulations. Usually, in case when some industries have specific regulations, the critical infrastructure and this industry regulation is the same. It's the same regulator and mostly the same rules. This information is not so public, and I found two cases. One is Germany and one in the United States, when the National Energy Regulatory Commission or agencies awarded fines for insufficient cybersecurity measures for energy companies. In Kazakhstan, I have a bit more detailed information of the actual fines. They are extremely low too, but you see the efficiency of working for this state agency, the National Committee for Information Security, is grow year to year, and I appreciate it as a resident of Kazakhstan. So let me summarize here. Who can cause the most damage in case of cybersecurity negligence? The government, not the hackers, because you see the size, you see the amount of these fines. It's unbelievable. We can imagine it. And I can't imagine hacker who can steal the similar amount of money. So what are the 5 obligations of the company? First of all, we need to process customer information in accordance with the stated purpose. And we need to respond to legitimate customer requests. We should notify the regulator and customers about incidents on time. We need to provide localization of personal data as requested by national laws. And of course, we need to have a functioning information security management system. And in some countries, regulators gave us very detailed requirements, and we need to fulfill these requirements. So in this situation, what does cloud migration give to us? As usual, any coin have two sides. Let's take a look on the positive side. It can give us ability to delegate many security functions to a cloud provider and ability to quickly and cheaply automate many security processes. We also have ability to quickly and cheaply provide scalability and redundancy for the online services. But let's rotate this flip and rotate this coin and look on we have the necessity to delegate many security functions to a cloud provider. We greatly increase risk of violation of some legal requirements, for example, localization of personal identification information, and risk of misuse of data by a cloud provider, especially SaaS provider. And you know, when you use a free platform for hosting websites, actually you give this to this provider the opportunity to earn money on your customers, right? It's his money, and actually you violate these customers' freedoms, these customers' right. Let me give you some examples. You know, I guess you know the ISO 27001 standard. And I guess you know the Annex A for the standards that give us a list of cybersecurity controls, and we should use these controls and justify why we use these controls, and we need to justify why we don't use the, we decided to not use the specific controls. So, for instance, 8.5, we need to implement secure authentication technologies based on information access restrictions and topic-specific policy on access controls. And you know, I guess you know, the Azure Active Directory feature that allow us to implement an adaptive authentication. So in case of risky environment, for instance, one attempt from Almaty and 5 minutes later, login attempt from Astana. In this case, Active Directory automatically will request the additional factor or maybe block this account completely until the security officer dive in this situation. We need to implement data masking. Yes, all of us know about the importance of data masking, but why we see a lot of unmasked cardholder data in some S3 buckets. And Amazon Macy gave us opportunity to intellectually find this unmasked data on automated matter. And of course, we need to monitor all our systems, applications, networks for anomalous behavior and take the appropriate action. And for instance, Azure Sentinel can give us a very cheaper way to implement this, very cheaper and effective way to implement this security control. But these examples are relatively simple. But let me give you example a bit more complicated. Imagine that we need to be compliant with PCI DSS or other security standard. How can we make this compliance checking online on a regular basis each hour, daily, weekly, weekly maybe in on-premise infrastructure, but I believe we can't make this kind of cheaper and faster compliance checking without the cloud technologies. And you see how it looks in the AWS world. I guess all cloud providers said us that they follow the shared responsibility model. The underwater part is the on provider side and its responsibility. I'm surprised why the blue part is on the water, but not under the water, but it's Amazon picture. And the part that on the water is on the customer side. It's right, but writes a bit. But actually, our cybersecurity processes are end-to-end, from top to down and back. Let me give you an example. Imagine when we talk about the incident management, when we need to find the anomalous behavior, we need to see a lot of events, we need to correlate them, we need to initiate the incident, we need to close some clear ways of intruders coming to us. We need to notify a lot of people. This is a whole process, and it can be splitted on the customer side and Amazon side. And our company, as owner of information security management system, it's our company completely accountable for this process. And of course, we need to orchestrate all these components and tools that provide to us by cloud providers, for instance, GuardDuty, SNS, Lambda, a lot of things that we see in AWS portfolio. And Gartner said that 99% of cloud security failures on the customer side. So we need to think about it. We need to understand that our faults will cause the cybersecurity breaches. So what we can do? First of all, choose the cloud provider wisely. We need to pay attention to the SOC 2 or ISO 27 or 7th certification of the cloud provider. We need to build and certify end-to-end information security management system. And I strongly recommend to build this information security management system on the basement of reasonable threat model. We need to ensure the formal compliance of our information security management system with the applicable legal requirements. And you know, there are many regulators, and after the requirements are challenging to conform in the same time. We need to informally reconcile the threat model and information security management system with regulators. We need to listen their concern and answer them convincingly. We need to test our processes of the ISMS, and the test results, including successful ones, are convincing evidence of the effectiveness of our information security management system, both for regulators and customers. And of course, we need to stage migrate our applications and data to the cloud. Let me give you one example. You know, Anatoly and me worked in one of largest Kazakhstan bank some years ago, and since this moment and up to nowadays all banks, I think, all Kazakhstani banks think about hosting some applications in a foreign, well-known public clouds. And what we need to do? We need to inventory the applicable legislations and regulators, and we need to shortlist the suitable cloud providers. We need to develop a threat model. I love the Stride model from Microsoft, but maybe you love different. And plan the necessary security controls with the including the cloud provider architects. Let me remind that we not choose the specific cloud provider. We shortlist suitable cloud providers. So due to their competition for your attention, for your money, cloud provider will provide you a really brilliant cloud architects to attract your business to their clouds. We need to approve the threat model and security controls firstly with our layers and later with regulators, and implement these controls and provide a staged migration of application and data to the cloud. So what should we concern about? I think first and foremost, the cross-border transfer of personal data and be compliant both with the Kazakhstan law and GDPR. We need to get the explicit client consent, and we need to decide what we should do in case when customer withdraw its consent, his consent, and we can delete this data. For instance, this data is in the backups on the backup media, and this media contains a data of million of other customers. They consent is actual. We need to think about the presence of the country where the data center of selected cloud provider located. The European Commission provide, it names adequacy decision, a list of approved countries, but due to Kazakhstan law, we need to give an explicit explanation why the selected country ensures the proper protection of personal data. And let me remind that the existence of the local law in the specific country is good, but not enough. We need to think about the law enforcement practice in this country, because, you know, some laws exist, but not applied in practice. And of course, we need to provide the local storage of personal data according to the Kazakhstan law 94. And I guess the easiest way to comply with this requirement is provide the storage of backup media inside of Kazakhstan border. And of course, we need to think about the necessity to encrypt data in the cloud with a key on the bank side, according to the national bank rules. And I think one of way to formally comply with such rule is to use only cloud services that support key management service, and not only key management service, but key management service with the keys generated in on-premise HSM. And you see both Azure and AWS, two major cloud providers globally, provide this way to formally be compliant with such requirement. But again, let me remind that formal compliance is not enough. You need to respectfully talk with the representatives of state regulators and convince them that your security controls are effective enough. So, the brief summary. What are the success factors for migration to the public cloud? Firstly, the apparent reason why to do it. It may be a mission. You know, a lot of people feel the headache. And I can imagine the company with mission to deliver an aspirin tablet to anyone on this globe in 15 minutes from the start of headache and request on the online marketplace. Good mission. It may be values. For instance, imagine that we think that we need, imagine that we are artistic people. We love to invent something. We joined to, we came to our company to make something great. So in case when we can offload some routine actions, some routine duties to anyone not so artistic, it's good. So following these values, it's a good idea to offload some our duties to the cloud. And of course, it may be risks. We need to understand the applicable legislations. We need to establish a risk-driven information security management system with end-to-end processes. We need to have respectful, risk-based conversations with regulators. And of course, we need to come supported by management. I love clouds for decades. I dive into them since the 90s. You see myself in a yellow suit in the center of this old photography. But currently, I love clouds too. I love them from the technical side. I love them from the compliance side. I love them from the administrative side, and I will be happy to help, to be helpful to you in any way. Thank you.
Thank you, Theod. It was a great presentation, I think. And we have one question now from Andrei Morozov. He asked you about what international standards would you recommend to protect information in the cloud? Maybe can share some things about it.
Yes. First and foremost, the decision on which standards be compliant is a decision of specific company. One company that have business in Russia should be compliant with international standards widespread in Russia. But another company that have business in the United States should follow the international standards in the United States. For instance, SOC 2 in the United States and ISO 27001 in Russia. But what's the idea of following some standards? I think the key idea to provide a right level of trust from regulator, from customers, from business partner to you. So it's better to remind that you have only one and only 1 month and 2 years. So in case when you will hear twice more than speak, you will have opportunity to hear your vis-a-vis concerns. And if your vis-a-vis said, you are great guys, but without 2701, we can't invite your company in our tender, you will make the right decision. Okay?
Okay, thank you. And one more question from Andrei. He asks, what types of, maybe not types, but maybe what cloud service providers in Kazakhstan we have, and what you think about their protection, the level of their protection, maybe like that?
First of all, I know a bit about the local providers, and in comparison with Amazon and AWS, where I passed systematic learning, I passed the professional exams. I don't do something like this for the local provider, so I can't speak about their offering on a professional way. Let me be silent about it.
Okay. So maybe any questions by voice from our colleagues or by chat, or it's all clear? Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for invitation, and sorry, my English is not perfect, but I did my best.
Yeah, I think for the first time it was great. Thank you, and we will great to invite you again. So thank you, colleagues. The record will be maybe.
Sorry, Mirzaev, what you mean in 1337?
Yeah, it's
programmers. It means elite.
Okay, thank you for words.
So the record will be in YouTube soon, and you can check this out. And also we have shared the presentation of Theo also. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a nice evening.
Thanks.